The billionaire CEO pulled his baseball cap lower, shoulders hunched, and stepped into one of his own stores like a man who didn't belong. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, bouncing off spotless linoleum floors and gleaming racks of merchandise. To the cashiers, to the stock boys hauling boxes down narrow aisles, to the security guard leaning on his post by the front door, he was no one. Just another tired man in a hoodie. Nobody recognized him. Not even the manager who should have known his name by heart. And that was exactly how Damon Carter wanted it. He'd built Carter & Co. into a billion-dollar retail empire. But he'd learned long ago that glossy reports and corporate surveys only showed what middle management wanted him to see. That's why he came here undercover, in jeans that smelled faintly of motor oil, in a thrift store jacket with a frayed sleeve. He wanted to know the truth, but nothing could have prepared him for what he heard next. From deep in the employee corridor, muffled by the industrial buzz of fluorescent bulbs, came the sound of someone sobbing. Not a quiet sniffle, not the kind of tears one wipes away with a deep breath and a forced smile. These were broken, raw sobs, echoing against tile walls. Damon froze. He followed the sound until he stood outside the employee restroom, heart thudding. A thin crack of light glowed beneath the door, slicing across the dull gray floor. And lying there, half soaked in a puddle of mop water, was a small silver rectangle, a name badge. Elena Rivera, custodial staff. Damon stared at it. The sound from inside wasn't just sadness. It was the sound of someone's entire world unraveling. He'd heard weeping before, of course, in boardrooms after layoffs, from entrepreneurs he'd outbid. But this was different. This was grief mixed with terror. 3 months ago, corporate reports had told him this store was a shining example. Perfect employee satisfaction scores, 0 complaints, top efficiency ratings. On paper, this location was flawless. Yet the woman crying on the other side of that flimsy restroom door was living a completely different story. A terrifying question burned in his chest. If this was happening in his own company, under his own name, then what else had he missed? The truth, he would soon learn, was worse than anything he imagined. He knocked gently. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his voice soft, almost deferential. Are you okay in there?" The sobbing stopped. Silence. Then the scrape of toilet paper, the sound of someone trying to gather themselves. I'm fine," a woman's voice said, unconvincing and thin. "Just give me a minute." It wasn't fine. Damon could hear it, the sharp edge of exhaustion, the tremble of someone who had carried too much for too long. When the door finally opened, she emerged like a shadow of herself. A petite Latina woman, early 40s maybe, wearing a wrinkled custodial uniform. Her eyes were swollen, rimmed red. She bent quickly, almost desperately, to pick up her fallen badge. But her hands shook so badly she fumbled the clip twice before pinning it back to her shirt. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes averted. "I shouldn't be. I need to get back to work." Damon studied her carefully. Her skin was cracked and raw around the knuckles, the unmistakable burn of harsh chemicals. Deep circles carved themselves beneath her eyes, the look of a woman working 2 jobs, maybe 3, and sleeping too little. But it wasn't her hands or her eyes that caught his attention. It was the way she flinched at footsteps echoing from the sales floor. "You don't look fine," Damon said gently. He extended a hand like an equal, not a superior. "Name's Mike. Just started here today." For a moment she looked at him, as if trying to decide whether to trust a stranger in a hoodie. Then her shoulders sagged, like a soldier lowering a pack too heavy to carry. "It's just, everything's falling apart," she admitted, voice hushed. "My daughter, Sophia. She needs surgery. Her heart condition's getting worse and I can't afford." She cut herself off with a sharp shake of her head. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "How long have you worked here?" Damon asked. 3 years. Her answer came quickly, almost defensively. Never missed a day, never late. But lately, she gestured weakly toward the bulletin board at the end of the hall. Damon turned. The board was chaos. Shifts crossed out in red pen, new ones scrawled in half-legible handwriting, names shuffled like cards in a crooked dealer's hands. He traced her name across the weeks, 20 hours one week, 35 the next, then dropped back down to 15. No pattern, no way to budget, to plan, to breathe. They keep cutting my hours, Elena whispered, staring at the ground. Mr. Brennan says it's corporate policy, but I don't understand. The store's always busy, always short on people. Damon's jaw tightened. He knew the policies. Full-time employees were guaranteed consistent hours. This deliberate seesawing was manipulation, pure and simple. And when I asked about the health insurance, her voice broke. She pressed her lips together, but the words came anyway. He said I wasn't eligible because my hours are too irregular. The pieces clicked together like broken glass in Damon's mind. Someone was gaming the system. That doesn't sound right, he said carefully. Elena's eyes darted around. Then she leaned closer, voice dropping to a fearful whisper. It's not just me. Jason in electronics, Brittany in cosmetics. We're all dealing with the same thing. But Mr. Brennan says if we don't like it, there are plenty of people who'd be happy to take our jobs. A chill ran through Damon. Kyle Brennan. He remembered the name, regional manager, on paper. Glowing performance reviews, reduced labor costs, zero formal complaints. In reality, a petty tyrant playing God with people's lives. Listen, Mike, Elena whispered, clutching her badge like it was her lifeline. I need this job. My daughter's only 8. Without that surgery. She couldn't finish. Her shift ended at 11, she explained. But she was required back at 6 the next morning for inventory. A double shift, though the system would only record 8 hours of pay. As she spoke, she adjusted her badge with trembling fingers. That small silver rectangle was more than plastic and metal. It was her rent, her child's medical care, her survival, and someone was using that desperation against her. As she walked back to the sales floor, Damon noticed the limp in her left leg. Years of standing on bare concrete, without the anti-fatigue mats the handbook mandated. He turned back to the chaotic schedule board. Each crossed-out shift wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a family's dinner cut in half. Gas money gone, medicine skipped. He'd built his company on the principle that good businesses took care of their people. But somewhere between the boardroom and this grim hallway, that principle had been shredded. The sound of the restroom door still echoed in his head. Someone crying, alone, in a company with perfect scores. This wasn't just a broken policy. It was a lie. And Damon Carter was about to find out just how deep that lie went. The next morning, Damon Carter stopped being Damon Carter. In front of the mirror of his budget hotel room, he became someone else, Mike Henderson, a laid-off construction worker with no degree, no connections, just a desperate need for steady pay. He practiced the slouch, the deferential smile, the yes sir cadence that men like Kyle Brennan expected from those they thought they owned. He tugged on worn jeans and second-hand work boots with a split sole. The disguise was simple but effective. What mattered wasn't the clothes, but the vulnerability they signaled. By noon, Mike Henderson was ready for his audition. The trap springs. Kyle Brennan didn't make him wait. The regional manager sat behind a desk too polished for this dusty backroom office. His hair slicked stiff with gel, a badge pinned high like a sheriff's star. He looked Damon up and down, eyes calculating the way a pawn shop owner sizes up a desperate seller. You got experience? Kyle asked. Construction. Mostly dried up now. Damon kept his eyes down, shoulders hunched. Just need steady work. Cleaning, stocking, anything. You got references? Yes, sir. Damon slid a fabricated resume across the desk. Names and numbers his corporate security team had planted for exactly this kind of operation. Kyle barely skimmed it. What mattered wasn't the paper. It was Damon's demeanor. Kyle saw what he wanted to see. A man grateful for scraps. "I like that attitude," Kyle said, smiling with predatory ease. "I can start you in custodial, night shift, $12 an hour. You'll be working with Elena Rivera. But don't let her fill your head with complaints. She's dramatic." The way he said it, like Elena's pain was theater for his amusement, made Damon want to lunge across the desk. Instead, he nodded eagerly. "Sounds perfect, sir. When do I start?" "Tonight, 10 p.m. sharp. And, Henderson." Kyle leaned forward, lowering his voice into a mock-friendly growl. "I reward loyalty and hard work. Employees who understand how things work here do well. Employees who cause trouble don't." The message was clear. Damon pretended to swallow hard. "Yes, sir, I understand." The store, after dark. At 9:58 p.m., Damon pushed through the staff entrance in his thrifted hoodie and work boots, now truly Mike Henderson. The store was closing, customers trickling out with the last carts. The fluorescent world of daytime retail was transforming into something else, a cavernous, echoing warehouse of silence and shadows. Elena spotted him by the time clock. Surprise flickered across her tired features. "You came back," she said softly. "Told you I needed the job," Damon replied with a shrug. "Guess we're on the same shift." For a moment she studied him, as though trying to figure out what made this new guy different. Then she sighed. "Stick close tonight. I'll show you the ropes." "And Mike?" Her voice dropped. "Whatever I said about Brennan yesterday, double it for the night shift. That's when he does his worst." The words chilled Damon. A broken system, one mop at a time. They started with the break room. Damon immediately noticed Elena filling the mop bucket with a harsh disinfectant, then using that same bucket to clean both the bathrooms and the employee kitchen. The chemical stench burned his nose. "Why are we using the same supplies?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Elena glanced nervously toward Kyle's office. "Budget cuts. He says we're using too much." She held up a nearly empty bottle of floor cleaner. "This has to last the week. Whole store." Damon bit his tongue. Corporate allocations guaranteed 10 times this supply. Where had it gone? At 11:30, Kyle made his first prowl. His shoes clicked like a predator's claws on tile. He found Elena restocking paper towels in the restroom. "You're moving too slow," Kyle snapped. "At this rate, you'll be here till sunrise." "I'm working as fast as I can, Mr. Brennan." "Not fast enough. I'm docking 30 minutes for inefficiency." He tapped a note into his phone and walked away. Damon stood hidden behind a display, fists clenched. He'd just witnessed wage theft in real time. 30 minutes, $6, stolen with a sentence. The impossible demand. At 1:15 a.m., Kyle returned with a clipboard, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face. "Corporates breathing down our necks about labor costs. Starting next week, one person on night custodial instead of two." Elena froze. "Sir, this store is 45,000 square feet. One person can't, one person can, and will." His smile sharpened. "Since you've been here longer, Rivera, you keep the job. But you'll handle the full workload in the same time frame. Unless you can't, in which case I'll find someone who can." He left without waiting for a reply. Elena slumped against a counter, face pale. "I can't do this whole store alone," she whispered. "If you complain, you'll lose the job entirely," Damon finished grimly. She nodded, tears brimming. "My daughter's surgery. It's scheduled for next month. I need the insurance." The words cut deeper than any threat. Behind the door, Damon noticed something. Kyle's office door left slightly ajar. Through the crack, a glow of blue light. "Elena," Damon said quietly, "can you cover the East Wing for a few minutes? I want to check something." Her eyes widened. "Mike, if he catches you, I'll be quick." He slipped down the hall, pressing close to the wall. Through the crack, he saw Kyle at his computer, screen bright with spreadsheets. Damon's breath caught. Kyle was logged into the employee scheduling system, slicing away hours with surgical precision. But those hours weren't just disappearing. They were reappearing under a phantom name, B. Brennan, Jr., a ghost employee. Every hour stolen from Elena, Jason, Brittany was being funneled into a fake account, padding Kyle's pocket. Damon lifted his phone, recording. Then it got worse. Kyle opened the health insurance enrollment system. Damon watched, horrified, as Kyle clicked through Elena's file. Full-time status, eligible for benefits. Then with a few keystrokes, Kyle reclassified her. Part-time, temporary, benefits revoked. Just like that, the surgery her daughter needed evaporated. Damon's hands shook. Rage surged hot in his chest, but he forced himself still. If he burst in now, all the evidence would vanish. He kept recording. The mountain of boxes. At 3 a.m., Kyle emerged, looking smug. "Henderson," he barked. "Move all the pallets from the back room to the sales floor." Alone. Damon followed him to the mountain of shrink-wrapped boxes. It was a 4-person job. His back screamed as he heaved the first load onto the dolly. Splinters bit into his hands. Sweat dripped down his spine. By 4 a.m., his muscles were burning, but the greater ache was in his chest. The realization that this wasn't about efficiency. It wasn't about cost. This was about power, about watching people struggle and savoring the control. The phone pattern. At 5:30, the office phone rang. 2 short bursts, 1 long. Damon had noticed it before. He positioned himself near the supply closet, recording app ready. Through the thin wall, Kyle's voice. "Brennan here." "Yeah, got the numbers. Rivera down to 12 hours. Nguyen at 15. The pregnant one, Brittany. I've got her on inventory duty. She'll quit in a month." Damon's stomach turned. "No complaints filed. They're too scared. I've got fake performance reviews ready. Attitude problems, reliability issues. Paper trail covers everything. Oh, and the kids' account? 800 this week. Corporate thinks I'm an efficiency genius." Then came the line that broke Damon's restraint. "The Rivera woman. Perfect target. Single mom. Needs insurance. I could cut her to 0, and she'd still beg for hours. Her kid needs heart surgery, so she'll take whatever I dish out." Damon's fists clenched so tight his knuckles cracked. He recorded every word. Darkest hour. When Kyle finally hung up, Damon stepped back into the hall, chest pounding. He had everything. Voice recordings, screen captures, proof of fraud, proof of cruelty. But when he rejoined Elena, he found her struggling to lift a bag of trash barely 30 pounds. Her face was pale, her hand pressed to her chest. "You okay?" Damon asked. "Just tired," she whispered, forcing a bitter smile. "Doctor visits cost money. Insurance never kicks in." Her body shook under the weight of a bag she shouldn't even have been carrying alone. Damon looked at her, this woman who'd given 3 years of loyalty only to be exploited, and knew one thing with absolute certainty. The playbook ended tomorrow. The following afternoon, Damon Carter returned to the store not as Damon Carter, billionaire CEO, but still as Mike Henderson, the anonymous new custodian. His disguise wasn't finished yet. One more act remained, one final performance before he revealed himself. At precisely 2 p.m., Kyle Brennan called the staff together for mandatory inventory training. About 15 employees gathered in a half-circle near customer service. Faces Damon had come to know during his undercover nights. Jason from electronics, Brittany from checkout, Elena with her limp and tired eyes, and others whose names were scribbled across the chaotic schedule board. They stood quietly, notebooks in hand, waiting for the manager to speak. Kyle strutted to the center, clipboard thick with papers, his badge gleaming like armor. He carried himself with the easy arrogance of a man convinced his power was absolute. "All right, people," Kyle announced, voice loud and commanding. "Corporate's on our backs about inventory accuracy. From now on, any discrepancies come out of your paycheck. Lost merchandise, miscounts, damaged goods, it all gets deducted." A ripple of unease moved through the group. Jason's eyes darted to Elena. Brittany shifted uncomfortably. A couple of part-timers exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't just harsh, it was illegal. Kyle saw their reaction and smirked. "I know some of you think this sounds unfair," he continued. "But maybe if certain people—" His gaze landed squarely on Elena. "Focused less on personal drama and more on their jobs, we wouldn't need these measures." Elena's shoulders hunched as if bracing against a blow. That was it. The final straw. Stepping into the light. Damon moved from the back of the group, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Actually, Brennan," he said evenly, "there is something unfair here. But it's not what you think." Heads turned. Kyle squinted at him. "Henderson, you got something to say?" "Yeah," Damon replied. "Quite a lot, actually." He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. One tap, and Kyle's own voice spilled into the open air. "Rivera down to 12 hours. Nguyen at 15. The pregnant one, Brittany. I've got her on inventory duty. She'll quit in a month." The effect was electric. Employees froze, eyes wide. Every one of them recognizing the contempt in that voice. Kyle's face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" Damon kept his voice calm, controlled. "That's you, last night at 5:30 a.m., explaining to your accomplice how you've been stealing wages, cutting hours, and pocketing the difference." Whispers erupted through the crowd. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Brittany's face flushed red with rage. Jason clenched his clipboard until his knuckles went white. "You can't do this," Kyle barked, his bravado cracking. "That's an illegal recording." "Actually," Damon said smoothly, "Michigan is a one-party consent state, perfectly legal." He stepped forward, the weight of authority settling on his shoulders. "But you know what isn't legal? Wage theft, benefit fraud, workplace harassment, systematic retaliation. Those are crimes, Brennan." The reveal. Kyle tried to rally. His voice rose in desperate anger. "You don't know who you're messing with, Henderson. I'll have you arrested. I'll—" "For what?" Damon cut him off, his voice sharp as a blade. "For exposing the truth." And then he reached into his pocket. Slowly, deliberately, he drew out a gold badge. The engraved letters gleamed under the harsh fluorescent light. Damon Carter, CEO. Carter & Co. Gasps rippled through the circle. A stunned silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead lights. Employees looked from the badge to Damon's face, recognition dawning in real time. "My name isn't Mike Henderson," Damon declared, voice carrying through the store. "It's Damon Carter. I own this company, and you, Kyle Brennan, are finished." The silence shattered into a storm of whispers and gasps. Some employees stepped back in shock. Others stepped forward, eyes blazing with vindication. Elena's tears brimmed again, but this time not from humiliation, from disbelief. Kyle's bravado crumbled. His voice wavered. You can't do this. I've got a contract." "You had a contract," Damon corrected, his voice like iron. "But fraud voids every agreement." Judgment Day. "Security," Damon called. Two plainclothes corporate security officers, who had been waiting outside since morning, entered, flanking Kyle like shadows. "Kyle Brennan," Damon said, his tone steady and commanding. "You are terminated, effective immediately. You are also under investigation for wage theft, benefit fraud, and conspiracy. These officers will escort you off the premises." Kyle flailed, desperate. "You can't prove anything. It's their word against mine." He jabbed a finger toward the employees. Who's going to believe a bunch of immigrants and high school dropouts over me? Damon's eyes turned to ice. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a cutting whisper that carried through the silence. I don't need their words, Kyle. I have yours. Recorded confessions, computer logs, photographic evidence, and something else. He leaned closer, his tone deadly calm. I have real power, the kind you pretended to wield. Kyle's shoulders sagged. The fight drained from him as security took him by the arms. This isn't over, he muttered weakly. Yes, Damon replied coldly. It is. As Kyle was led away, through the aisles where he'd barked orders, past the checkout lanes where he'd humiliated workers, under the stares of customers pausing mid-transaction. Damon felt the shift in the air. The tyrant was gone. The apology. For a long moment, the circle of employees stood in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. Then Elena's trembling voice broke it. You're really the owner? I am, Damon said, looking her in the eye. And I owe all of you an apology. His voice carried the weight of remorse. I built this company on the principle that we take care of our people. But I lost sight of what was happening on the ground. I failed you. The words hit harder than any corporate speech ever could. These workers had been conditioned to expect punishment, not compassion. Jason spoke up, hesitantly. So, what happens now? Are we all getting fired for talking to you? The question struck Damon like a blow. That they even feared such a thing revealed just how deep Kyle's poison had seeped. Nobody's getting fired, Damon said firmly. In fact, we're going to fix everything he broke, starting today. The field hospital. Damon pulled out his phone and made a call. Within 20 minutes, Lauren Patel, Carter & Co.'s head of HR, arrived with a team of specialists and 3 laptops. They transformed the break room into a makeshift command center, papers and forms spread across the tables, screens flickering as they pulled up employee records. Lauren worked with brisk efficiency. Elena Rivera, she called, scanning her tablet. You've been here 3 years, correct? Yes, Elena said nervously. According to Brennan's files, you're classified as part-time temporary, but our system shows 34 months of full-time hours. Effective immediately, you're reclassified as full-time permanent. Health coverage is active today, retroactive to your hire date. Elena's knees nearly buckled. Damon caught her arm. My daughter's surgery, she whispered, voice cracking. Fully covered, Lauren assured. Pre-authorization will be processed today. And Elena, you're owed $14,847 in stolen wages and unpaid overtime. You'll have the check within 48 hours. A sob escaped Elena's throat. Part relief, part disbelief, part prayer. Around the room, other employees were receiving similar news. Brittany, 7 months pregnant, was told she was now on paid leave until after maternity leave, full benefits, guaranteed position upon return. Jason was offered an assistant manager position. Others were reimbursed for hours cut, benefits restored, titles corrected. It was a whirlwind of justice, a triage of restitution. The offer. Finally, Damon turned back to Elena. She stood clutching her new paperwork like it was a lifeline, eyes wide with gratitude and fear. Elena, he said, voice steady, I have one more thing for you. I'd like you to manage this store. The room went still. Even the HR specialist stopped typing. Elena blinked. Sir, I clean floors. I don't know how to. You know how to work harder than anyone should have to. Damon interrupted gently. You know this store better than anyone. You've been managing the impossible for 3 years. Managing a store will be easy by comparison. But I don't have experience. I'll provide training. Full development program, business courses, whatever you need. Starting salary, $65,000, plus benefits, plus bonuses tied to employee satisfaction, not just profit margins. Elena stared, stunned into silence. The woman who had been sobbing in a bathroom 2 nights ago was now being offered command of the very store where she'd been invisible. Around her, employees began to smile, some clapping softly, others wiping tears. The air shifted from disbelief to celebration. The tyrant was gone, and a leader had been born. 3 weeks later, Damon Carter returned to the same store. The first time he'd stepped through those doors, it had been into a kingdom of fear. Chaotic schedules, managers abusing power, employees who whispered instead of speaking. Today, the transformation was almost unbelievable. The first thing he noticed wasn't what he saw, it was what he heard. Laughter. Real, unguarded laughter spilling from the break room. Not the nervous chuckles of workers afraid their boss might be listening. The sound carried down the hall, warm and vibrant. It stopped Damon in his tracks. A new atmosphere. Inside the break room, he found Jason Nguyen, no longer hunched behind an electronics counter, but standing tall with a clipboard, teaching 2 new hires how to handle the inventory system. The key is accuracy, not speed, Jason explained. Take your time, get it right. Nobody's going to yell at you for being thorough. The trainees listened intently, nodding. Behind them, a new poster hung on the wall. Assistant Manager of the Month, Employee Choice Award, Jason Nguyen. Damon smiled. Under Kyle Brennan, mistakes had been weapons. Now precision was encouraged, not punished. On the sales floor, Brittany Collins helped a customer with a return. At 8 months pregnant, she glowed with calm confidence. She no longer carried the anxious posture of someone terrified of losing her job. She knew, beyond any doubt, that her maternity leave was guaranteed, her position waiting when she was ready. Damon later learned 3 major competitors had already copied Carter & Co. as new maternity policy. The ripple effect had begun. And then, in the office upstairs, he saw her, the manager's desk. Elena Rivera sat at the manager's desk, bent over a laptop. No mop, no bucket. Her uniform replaced with business casual attire. A simple nameplate rested proudly on her desk. Elena Rivera, store manager. She looked up, smiling when she saw him. "Mr. Carter, how's it going?" Damon asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Challenging," she admitted. She gestured to a binder filled with notes. Profit margins, scheduling, employee development strategies. "I never thought I'd be learning this stuff. But once you've worked every job in the building, the numbers make sense. They're not abstract. They're people." On the wall behind her hung a chart of employee satisfaction scores. Just a month ago, the numbers were abysmal. Now, they'd skyrocketed to industry-leading levels. "The team's incredible," Elena continued, her eyes shining. "Once people stopped being afraid, they started bringing ideas." Jason suggested cross-training so nobody feels trapped in one department. Brittany designed a new customer feedback system. Even the high school part-timers are pitching suggestions. They feel safe now. Damon glanced out the office window at the sales floor. Employees moved with energy, not fear. Customers smiled as they interacted with staff who genuinely wanted to help. The change was visible everywhere. "Family first. How's Sophia?" Damon asked softly. Elena's entire face lit up. "She had her surgery last week. The doctors say the repair was perfect. She'll be able to run, play, live like any other child." Her voice broke slightly. "She wants to meet you. She calls you the man who saved Mommy's job." Damon felt something tighten in his chest. "I'd like that very much." Elena hesitated, then pulled a folder from her desk. "There's something else. Remember how you asked me to document anything similar to what Brennan was doing?" Damon leaned forward. "Yes, I've been talking with workers from other chains. Nothing official, just casual conversations. What Brennan did, it's not rare. The wage theft, the hour cuts, the intimidation. It's like there's a playbook out there. And I think Carter & Co. could lead the way in changing the whole industry." She opened the folder. Inside were notes, testimonies, patterns of abuse that mirrored everything Damon had uncovered. Her eyes burned with conviction. We could create a certification program. Worker-verified fair employment. Stores that treat employees right get certified. Customers will know where their money's going. And the verification won't come from corporate self-reporting. It'll come from the workers themselves. Anonymous surveys, surprise audits, real accountability. Damon sat back, genuinely impressed. 6 months ago, Eleanor had been too afraid to ask for consistent hours. Now she was designing policy to transform an industry. Draft a full proposal, he said. Business plan, implementation, budget, 2 weeks. Elena nodded, already scribbling notes. The national stage. 6 months later, Damon stood before a packed auditorium at the National Retail Federation conference. The room was filled with executives, managers, reporters, cameras broadcasting live across the country. His keynote presentation. Leadership from the ground up. What happens when CEOs stop hiding in boardrooms? Last year, Damon began, his voice steady. I thought I was running a successful company. Our profits were up. Our efficiency ratings were stellar. Our management reviews were glowing. By every metric Wall Street cared about, Carter & Co. was crushing it. He clicked to the first slide. A still frame from security footage. The image of Elena in her custodial uniform, bent over a mop bucket. But I wasn't leading a successful company, Damon said. I was presiding over a system that allowed good people to suffer while predators profited from their pain. And the worst part? I had no idea it was happening. The auditorium fell silent. Damon walked them through the Undercover investigation. The wage theft, the benefit fraud, the systematic psychological abuse. He told them about Kyle Brennan, about the night shift playbook. The truth is, real leadership isn't about commanding from above, Damon said. It's about understanding from below. It's about seeing your company through the eyes of the people who can't afford to lose their jobs. He clicked to the next slide. Elena at her manager's desk, dressed in her blazer, leading a team meeting. Today, Elena Rivera manages one of our highest-performing locations. Employee satisfaction is at 94%. Customer ratings up 47%. Profits up 23%. When you treat people right, everything else follows. The ripple effect. He showed the results. 12 major retailers had already adopted the Worker-Verified Fair Employment Certification. Federal wage theft investigations recovering over $2 million. Pending legislation inspired by Carter & Co.'s public reforms. We've proven, Damon concluded, that doing right by employees isn't just morally correct, it's profitable. Companies with worker-verified certification are seeing profit increases of 18% and customer loyalty jumps of 31%. The numbers speak as loudly as the stories. The final slide appeared. A photo of Carter & Co.'s first employee council meeting, representatives from all 47 stores gathered at one table as equals. The person crying in that bathroom could be in your company right now, Damon said, his voice quiet but fierce. The question is, will you hear them? And more importantly, will you act? The applause thundered, spreading change. After the speech, as Damon signed copies of the Harvard Business School case study about the transformation, a young executive approached. Mr. Carter, he said nervously, I think we might have problems like that at my company. Where do I even start? Damon smiled and handed him a card, not his, but Elena's. Start by listening, he said. And when you hear something you don't like, don't rationalize it. Fix it. A leader emerges. That evening, Damon called the store to check in. It had become his weekly ritual. Elena, he said, how's Sophia? Perfect, she replied, warmth in her voice. Her cardiologist says her heart's stronger than most kids her age. She's been asking when she can visit the store again, to see Mama's office. She's welcome any time, Damon said softly. I'd love to meet the little girl who helped save our company. There was a pause. Then Elena's tone turned serious. I got a call today from a janitor at Henderson Retail. She'd seen the news coverage. She wanted to know if our employee council model could work at her company. I told her to document everything, find allies, and that we'd help her build a case. Was that okay? Damon smiled. That was perfect. You're thinking like a leader now. Visible weeks later, Damon visited the store again. On the bulletin board that had once been filled with chaos, scribbled hours, crossed out shifts, now hung a clean, predictable schedule, alongside photos from the store's first employee appreciation picnic. In the center of the break room, Jason presented Damon with a framed photo. The entire staff gathered, smiling, around their renovated space. Comfortable seating, a proper kitchenette, sunlight streaming through new windows. In the middle stood Elena, holding a plaque that read, Carter & Co. Employee Choice Best Place to Work, 2024. It's not official, Jason explained. We made it ourselves. But we figured if anyone should decide whether a place is good to work, it should be the people who actually work there. Damon felt his throat tighten. In all his years of building empires, no recognition had meant more than this. As he left the store, his eyes caught on one last detail. The same silver badge that had once fallen to the restroom floor lay on the desk in the manager's office. But now it read, Elena Rivera, Store Manager, pinned proudly to a blazer, not lying abandoned on tile. The invisible had become visible, and an industry had changed because of it.